Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. Good morning and welcome to our exclusive College of Humanities and Sciences Masterclasses. We are very pleased to be joined this morning by three of our premier professors, Associate Professor Irving Johnson, Associate Prof. Zach Barnett, as well as Dr. Peace Wong. We are very privileged today because this will be a very quick introduction in a bite-sized sort of session with three of them from our various departments in the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. So you will be introduced to supernaturalism in Southeast Asia, evidence and promise making, as well as making sense of self-awareness and what that may mean. So just to a bit of a housekeeping, each session will last for about 25 minutes. During these specific sessions, there will be a dedicated time slot for Q&A. We would advise you to use the chat box to engage with our professors. So if you allow me, please, let's welcome Associate Professor Johnson to lead the first masterclass. Thank you so much.
All right, you guys can hear me, right?
Yes, we can, Prof. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Niza. I'm going to share screen. I have some PowerPoint slides. All right, so this lecture I'm going to give you is based on a module I used to teach in the Department of Southeast Asian Studies. It's kind of been resting for a while, but we incorporate a lot of the materials you will learn in this lecture into our other modules, primarily the one on Introduction to Southeast Asia, SE 101 big module. But this is actually a very specific class that focuses on the concept and notions of supernaturalism in Southeast Asia. And it's something I felt was or is very relevant to our lives as people living in the region, because it's a belief system that pervades throughout Southeast Asia. It goes across ethnicities, of cultures, religions, you know, class. I mean, it's a system of belief that stretches way back into antiquity and is also on Netflix right now. So it's something that links past and present and will definitely continue into the future. So if anybody tells you that supernaturalism is dead, no, it's not. Okay. So what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to give you little snippets of like corpse oil and things like that, to kind of get you aware of kind of the things that go bump in the night, the things that inhabit spaces in your room or in your office or on YouTube, and really show you how that is actually an integral part of being Southeast Asian, right? How often have we taken taxis, you know, comfort, and seen the taxi driver who is ethnically Chinese Singaporean hanging a whole bunch of Thai amulets on his mirror, right? How often have we, for the guys who have done NS, right? How often have we sat down and told stories about hauntings in camps, right? How often have we gone to the movie theater pre-COVID and watch Thai horror films, right? Like Thailand is just churning these things out, like constantly churning out horror films that go onto the international market. You know, how often have we seen shrines, little shrines underneath trees, as you walk around Toa Payoh or Clementi or at a construction site, right? So what does all this mean? So that's the question, right? I myself am an anthropologist. I did my research on Thai communities living in Malaysia. But when I was an honors student at NUS, my research was on love magic and sorcery that happens in Malaysia as well. So these are some of the things that personally I'm very interested in, and I see all the time happening around me, right? So I titled the module, the class, the masterclass, Roasted Fetuses and Corpse Magic, an introduction to supernaturalism in Southeast Asia. Why roasted fetuses and why corpse magic? Because these are the two commonalities we find throughout much of Southeast Asia in relation to the supernatural and in the production of magic. Fetuses, meaning the unborn child that have been extracted from a mother who dies during pregnancy, is a very common ingredient used in traditional magic in Thailand, Cambodia, Burma, Laos, the whole stretch of countries. Similar type beliefs exist in the Malay-speaking world, right? In Malaysia, in Indonesia, in the Philippines. The belief that these children, fetuses, unborn, can be manipulated, their souls, if you could call it. But of course, soul is a Western idea, but their subjectivities can be manipulated by particular people through particular processes to do their bidding. And I got very interested in this because I like to buy stuff on eBay and Carousel. And I saw so many Singaporeans selling this stuff on Carousel. And I'm like, what is going on, right? Like isn't that like illegal or something? So I'm going to go kind of introduce you a little bit to some of these issues. Now, I'm going to give you a newspaper article. You can read this on your own. I'm just giving you a snippet. This is actually from 2012. I use it in my class, and the students freak out all the time. If you just read it on your own, it says, 6 roasted fetuses roasted. You have to roast them. They don't work on their own. So they have to be cooked. 6 roasted fetuses were covered in gold, used for black magic rituals, were found in a hotel room. And this was actually in Hong Kong, right? The person got the fetuses from Thailand. The person is a Taiwanese living in the UK. So talk about globalization, right? It's a Taiwanese ethnic Chinese man, British citizen, living in the UK, buying fetuses from Thailand that have been magically transformed into these things, and was arrested in a hotel room in Hong Kong. So why was he doing this? And what is the appeal of Thai magic, right? Now, in this class, I don't want you to create stereotypes, because I think that actually beats the point of the class. The point of the class is whether we're talking about established world religions like Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, the big religions that we hear about, or whether we're talking about indigenous belief systems, they're all equally legit. They're all equally potent, right? It's not to say that supernaturalism is actually beneath these world religions, because actually what I'm going to show you in the class is in Southeast Asia, they are so intertwined to many people, right, that we cannot even separate them as saying that this is this and that is that. They are so intertwined. They're so much a part of our cultural DNA, beliefs in this other realm, right? But then we're also going to move it to the present and talk about globalization of these things. Why is it on eBay USA, I can buy Thai magic, I can buy corpse oil, right? I can buy grilled body parts on eBay, right? So what does that tell us about kind of the transformations in belief systems as we move on in kind of this strange global world that we live in? Yikes, my slides are not moving. So this is a map of Southeast Asia for many of you who may not be too familiar. Yes, you do live in Southeast Asia. The first question I ask my students in my class, Introduction to Southeast Asia, is how many of you live in Southeast Asia? And like 10 people raise their hand, right, out of like 300 students. And I'm like, where do the rest of you live? And they're like, oh, we live in Singapore. Well, Singapore is Southeast Asia, and a lot of the belief systems that we encounter in Singapore are very, very similar to what you would get in the region because we're part of the same region, right? Southeast Asian popular belief systems are very, very old. And I say popular belief systems in opposition or in relation to what many people would confuse as world religions. Okay. So for instance, many people would say, oh, Thailand is a Buddhist country. The Philippines is a Catholic country. Malaysia is a Muslim country. Now, that's right, correct. Yes, I mean, that's how the government portrays itself, right? But when we go down to the everyday lives of people living in Malaysia, the Philippines, and Thailand, we may find something that's actually quite different. The person may consider himself Catholic or Muslim or Thai or Buddhist, right? Adhering to a world religion that's projected by the government, by the state, right? But at the same time, dabble and engage with a belief system that's very, very much older. Now, Southeast Asia's population is 650 million people. That's a lot of people, right, living in this region. And the belief systems we talk about predate, many of them predate the arrival of Christianity or Islam or Buddhism or Hinduism, right? The earliest examples of a world religion we have in Southeast Asia come from Hinduism. That's the earliest one, right? The most recent one is Christianity, right? That came with colonialism. But I mean, even Christianity has been in the Philippines for hundreds of years, right? So hundreds of years now. Now the people have been living there even longer. This is not to say that when Southeast Asia was populated, these guys had no religion. No, I mean they had their own belief systems, and this is what we call popular belief systems. There is no name for it. The Thais, the Javanese, the Malays have no name for the thing that we're talking about. We are working within an academic culture that privileges one language, which is English. And in English, we have words to describe things in these categories, right? We have magic, we have sorcery, we have witchcraft, we have religion. But in many of these other languages that are spoken in Thailand, in Cambodia, in Myanmar, there's no differentiation, right? So we have to be aware of that fact. And the fact that if there's no differentiation, it means that these belief systems, it all comes under one big umbrella of a belief system, right? What we get is, for anthropologists, we call this syncretism. Syncretism in anthropology refers to a process where you have two different philosophies or ritual systems coming together to produce a different one. A classic example of syncretism is what happened when you have the slaves from West Africa doing the slave trade, right, across the Atlantic. And so these guys were brought to Europe and to America, right, as slaves. Now, in West Africa, they had their own religion, right? Some were Muslim, some were Yoruba. I mean, they had their own religion, their own African belief systems, or as well as Islam. When they were brought as slaves to the New World, they were forced to convert to Christianity. Now, that's a very difficult process because belief systems are so integral to who you are, right? So many of them adopted Christianity or Catholicism with African religions to produce a new religion, right? What you get in Brazil, what you get in Cuba, what you get, across the Caribbean, Haiti, what is popularly called voodoo. It's wrong. Its associations are really negative in Hollywood, but it's actually a belief system called voodoo that we get in places like Haiti and Dominican Republic. Now, in Southeast Asia, we have similar things, right? If you look at the pictures in front of you, that little amulet called an ating-ating, that's from the Philippines, right? It's not Catholic. The image is Catholic, right? It's sold outside the church. But the belief in powerful amulets predates Catholicism, right? We get amulets in Thailand. You get Singaporean uncles wearing a whole bunch of amulets, right? That are like 1 kilogram, right? We get amulets amongst Malay Muslim communities. We get amulets in Bali. We get it all over. The belief in hanging something sacred around your neck or tying it around your waist or around your upper arm. I mean, this is a very, very old belief system, right? The other picture you see, okay, the picture of the guy is a Malay shaman, and in northeast Malaysia, shamanic practices are very common amongst Malay Muslim communities. And what happens is if you have a patient, someone who is sick, the first recourse nowadays is to bring him to hospital, right? But some illnesses, the hospital doesn't know what's wrong with him, and so they bring him back, and then in some cases, a shamanic ritual is performed to find out what actually is the cause of the illness, right? And the shaman gets possessed by different spirits. Some of them are Hindu, some of them are Malay, some of them are Islamic, right? And they can't go in and out of his body, right? So his subjectivity keeps changing. And the spirits then talk through him and say, oh, okay, this person is sick because he had done so and so, right? And that's how healing is conducted. Now, moving on into a modern world, this practice has been banned by the Malaysian state government of Kelantan for being un-Islamic. This happened in 1990 when the Islamic government took over. Because what is actually happening is an incantation, invitation for the Hindu gods, because the Malays were Hindu prior to becoming Muslim. So they never really gave up on this Hindu Buddhist literature that they had with them, right? And then you had all the traditional Malay beliefs in hantus and spirits that are indigenous, pre-Hindu even. But the state government says, well, this is un-Islamic because these are Muslims performing this ritual, so let's ban it, right? So one of the things that we talk about in the module is modernity and what happens to these old belief systems in this kind of modern landscape, okay? And the study of magic, as you can see, is something that has been going on for a very long time. The British in Malaya were obsessed with it. They really were very fascinated by it because it's so much a part of the lives of the people, unlike in Europe, right? Because in Europe, the idea of magic has a particular connotation, right? But in Malaysia, or in Malaya, it was Malaya back then, it was just part of everyday life. And so British administrators living in Malaya were very fascinated by the huge variety of spirits and demons and goblins and whatnot that permeated this Malay world, this Malay philosophy, right? What you see in front of you is a classical Thai Buddhist altar. It's called Buddhist, and I put Buddhist in inverted commas because if you show this to a person in Sri Lanka, he'll be like, oh, that's not Buddhist, right? Because it's syncretic Buddhism. We see images of the Buddha, we see images of monks, Buddhist monks, famous monks. We also have an image of the kings, the Thai kings. We have a mask used in traditional drama. We have images of Hindu spiritual teachers. So, and this whole thing is wrapped around with white thread. You see the white thread around it? And the white thread is actually a conduit for the transmission of the sacredness from these objects to the person holding the thread. Okay, so it's something that's very, very mixed up, right? A Thai person say, yes, that's Buddhist, but a person who studies, Orthodox Buddhism would be like, oh no, that's not Buddhism. That's just something very, very strange. Now, these indigenous beliefs, right? The title of the class is Introduction to Supernaturalism in Southeast Asia. And traditionally, a class in NUS would be about 2 hours long. We're going to condense this whole lecture into 20 minutes and then have like 5-minute Q&A. There's certain commonalities across the region. And I think many of you listening in would be able to kind of pick out these things. So one of them is perhaps beliefs in spirits of the violent dead. These are people who died not from old age and not from illness and anything else. So a car accident, a stabbing, whatever. Women who die during pregnancy are considered extremely potent because they died with a baby inside them. And the baby itself, as the lecture mentioned, can be used as an ingredient in producing magic. You know, how often have we seen, for instance, in Singapore, when you have an accident where there's a fatality? Remember the big case, I think it's the 5 guys that died in the blast, in the car accident in Tanjung Pagar. And then after that, if you walk by that area in Tanjung Pagar, you see a little makeshift shrine set up, and there's like flowers and joss sticks and things like that put up in front of the shop house where the accident happened. And these are all very old belief systems, right, that to placate the spirits that kind of inhabit that space because of the violence that occurred at that moment. Beliefs in magic, and magic is basically what I'm talking about here. This is supernaturalism, right? Of which there are different types of magic. And for anthropologists, we like to divide it up into 2 kinds of magic, right? There is sympathetic magic and contagious magic. Sympathetic magic is when I try to influence you somehow, right? I put something, I do an incantation to affect you in a particular way. And then contagious magic tends to be a bit more negative. So we hear that a lot in Southeast Asia. And then there's a belief in like sacred spaces, sacred animals, particular hauntings. We get beliefs in ghosts and demons, and these kind of things occur throughout Southeast Asia, right? Now, I'm not saying that this is very unique to Southeast Asia. Certain aspects are. The belief in fetuses that can be manipulated for your doing, that's very Southeast Asian. But the belief in magic and in, you know, spots of power is something you get throughout the world. I mean, all different communities have these ideas, right? And in Southeast Asia, magic or supernaturalism is often associated with particular practitioners. So you have your Bomo and your Dukun and your Mo. Different societies call them different things. And now they're advertising on Facebook. So many guys are selling their services as magical practitioners on Facebook and on Instagram, right? They have all these really cool pages that you can click on. And in Southeast Asia, also something that's also very interesting, and I found this very interesting because it's part of my own research, was the association between supernaturalism and ethnicity. We get that very clearly in Singapore, that many Singaporean Chinese, right? Many Singaporean Chinese are very enamored almost by Thai supernaturalism, right? We have the Malay community in Singapore who speak about kind of the supernaturalism of the Javanese. So it's another group. So it's always talking about the magic of the other group as being extremely powerful, right? And that's something I was researching on as well in Malaysia, because when I was working with these magical, I call them magical practitioners, the so-called Bomos, and I'll be at their house and we'll be chit-chatting and stuff, and then suddenly a whole bunch of people come and I would leave the room, and many of them I noticed the magical practitioners I spoke to and I hung out with were Thai. They were Thai, ethnically Thai, but the people seeking them out were not Thai. They were either Chinese or Malays. So isn't that interesting? Because Chinese and Malays also have magical practitioners, but it's always seeking out the other, right? And in Singapore, there's a lot of money. I mean, there are a lot of guys out there from Thailand who come into Singapore and take on the role of magical practitioners, and they get paid a lot of money by Singaporean clients, right? You guys have probably heard of this man, right? The Bomo King of Malaysia, Bomo Raja. He's always in the news. He was really popular when the Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 disappeared. And he said, he could look through these 2 bamboo poles and he could predict where the flight was. And he said it was, taken by a gigantic Garuda bird and somewhere out there. He had to make a public apology on Malaysian TV for just his predictions, but he's always in the news, and he recently predicted something about Malaysian politics as well, but we won't go too much into that. Again, Thai supernaturalism among Singaporean Chinese, which is my pet topic. I really love it. Some of my friends I know are collectors of these little, they call them child spirits. In the Chinese pronounce it as Kuman Tong. Kumantong. In Thai, we say Kumantong, right? The golden child. And they represent, they're not actually a real fetus, but they represent the undead child, right? And they are used for all sorts of purposes to improve your business. Many of the associations between Chinese magic, Chinese, Singaporeans, and Thai magic is in the realm of economics, right? It's primarily based on, I want to improve my business. I want to get more customers into my shop. And so they use these things, right? It's not so much used in the realm of sorcery. Sorcery is when you use magic to hurt someone, right? Which is also found in Southeast Asia a lot. And these are images, these are just Google images. I Googled Singapore, Chinese, Thai magic, and then the keywords and these images popped up. And you can buy a whole bunch of it on Carousel, sold by Singaporeans, acquired from Thailand, right? And moving on, I mean, we are all Netflix fans, most of us are, right? If you watch Netflix, you can, you click on the Thai movies or Indonesian movies. I mean, there's a whole bunch of movies out there that deal with the supernatural because it's so integral to being Southeast Asian, to being Thai, to being Filipino, to being Malay, right? Inhuman Kiss is a really good movie. I strongly urge you guys to watch it. It's really good. It's not freaky at all, but it's kind of sad. But it deals with a very traditional Thai spirit called a Pikasu, which is a head with entrails hanging down. In the Malay world, this spirit is called a Pontianak. And in the 1950s, the Malayan film industry, right, in the 50s, the Malayan film industry in Singapore and KL was very big. And one of the genres that they kept focusing on was this Pontianak genre, right? A recent Malaysian film produced is called Dukun, and that is actually based on the story of Mona Effendi. Mona Effendi has been hanged. She was killed. She was executed because she had murdered a minister in Malaysia, and it's a real case, right? And it revolves around supernaturalism, what we call black magic, things like that, right? But these have been made into global films, primarily for internal circulation within the country, but once you get onto Netflix and once you get into streaming, right, it becomes a big thing. So the question we should ask is why, right? Why do these countries produce these films? Now, I'm not going to provide an answer for that in this lecture. I mean, that's another lecture altogether, right? But what is the obsession by filmmakers with this kind of genre? And eBay, of course, eBay, new commercial technologies, right? New marketplaces. Supernaturalism is no longer out there in the forest or in the cave. Supernaturalism is on your laptop. So these are images I got from eBay. And so you could buy all these things on eBay. The little amulet you see is of a traditional Thai character. Nobody really knows who he represents, and he's always shown with these red ruby eyes. It's kind of scary looking, and he's used primarily for, you could use it as an amulet, sometimes they come as statues, primarily for compassion magic, basically if you have this thing, right, it makes you more attractive to other people. Not so much in a sexual way, but more like, if you're going for the job interview and you need to ace it, he's going to help you, right? But it's a mutual relationship. He helps you, you help him. That's how magic works in Southeast Asia. It doesn't just work one way. You ask for something, you better give him something, because otherwise he's going to be upset, and you don't want him to be upset. That's not pleasant. So that's magic in a nutshell for you in Southeast Asia. If you guys are interested more on this topic, hit me up. Take classes in our department. We have a whole bunch of classes that deal with stuff. All right, so now I'm going to open up to Q&A. We have about 5 minutes, maybe.
Yep. Thank you so much, Prof. Johnson. We do have a question from Chun Ye, who's asking whether this course is under Southeast Asia.
This course is under the Department of Southeast Asia.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, so that's the specific question we had. Any other questions, Junior? We've responded to you. I see you. Okay, you gave us a thumbs up. Thank you so much. Any other questions? Otherwise, we can proceed to the next session, and you can just keep typing in your chats. Okay. Okay, I think there are no questions. So, Prof. Barnett, if you are comfortable, we can proceed to you.
Sure. Thanks. And thanks, Prof. Johnson. That was not something I know a lot about, and I learned a lot. So hi, everyone. It's great to see so many people here, and I think there are more on Facebook as well tuning in. So I wanted to, I guess I'll just introduce myself. My name's Zach, and I teach in the philosophy department at NUS. I grew up in the United States, and I've been in Singapore for about 3 years. I wanted to begin by asking the group of you, how many of you have taken some amount of philosophy in your education thus far? You can use the yes or no buttons to answer. So that could be a theory of knowledge. So say yes if you have, and say no if you have not. So that you might, if you do the theory of knowledge IB track, I think there's a lot of ways, but I myself did not take any philosophy before I came to university. Okay, it looks like maybe 10 people are saying yes, and maybe 18 are saying no. And maybe the rest of you aren't sure. And maybe, sometimes it's a little bit unclear. Maybe you've done something that kind of counts as philosophy and kind of doesn't. So, okay. So, I'm just going to share my screen here. What I'd like to do is to give you a little bit of a taste of what it might be like to take a philosophy class at NUS. And to do that, just want to make sure that when I do share my screen, it looks right. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that. Now, I wanted to give you a little bit of a taste of what it would be like to take a philosophy class here at NUS. And before I start, I did want to ask if there would be anyone who'd be willing to send me a message in chat, and this can be many of you, who would be willing to read something out loud with their camera on. It's just going to be reading some text involving a scenario that we're going to be discussing. So if you'd be willing to do that, you can just send me a message in chat, and probably many people will. I'm already getting some messages. So if you're willing to do that, I'll just pick someone. So yeah, just send me a message saying yes. And yeah, I might, it seems like if there are a few people who are willing to do it, then I might ask more than one of you to read more than one scenario. And thanks to those who have volunteered. So in philosophy, for those that maybe haven't taken it, we try to study some of the biggest, deepest questions that it's possible to ask. And this is a little webcomic you might have seen, and it's kind of fields arranged by purity, and you have the sociologist and the psychologist and the biologist. But you might be wondering, where is philosophy on this? So in philosophy, we study some of the biggest, deepest questions you can ask. So what is a good life? Is happiness all that matters? Are there objective facts about morality? Do we have free will? What is consciousness, and how can it exist in the universe? Is math a discovery or an invention? Is science objective? What is knowledge? What is rationality? Is there a God? Is there an afterlife? So these are all big, huge questions that in philosophy we study and we try to think about and explore together. And if you were to take a philosophy class at NUS, these are the sorts of questions that you might be exploring. Now, to give you a taste of what an upper level philosophy seminar might be like, we're going to look at an ethical question that we discuss in one of my courses. And it has to do with something that we might call promising against the odds. So consider the following scenario. And let's see, Junia, would you be willing to read the scenario?
All right, give me a minute.
No problem.
Okay, here it goes. So Alexis is regularly smoking cigarettes. She would like to break this habit, but so far she has been unable to quit. After a conversation with Jumbo, her significant other, Alexis decides to take action. She promises to herself and Jumbo that she will not smoke cigarettes anymore, not even one. Alexis also has studied nicotine addiction extensively. She knows that most people who sincerely promise to quit smoking cigarettes do not succeed in their first attempt. Even this, should Alexis believe that she will be the exception? If not, is she justified in making this promise against the odds?
Okay, good. So I want to give you a moment now. So obviously we have over 130, we have over 120 people here. We probably aren't going to be able to get into a discussion with the whole class. Although if this were an upper level seminar, that's exactly what we would do. But I do want to give you a moment to think about it. If you're watching with family, you could turn to them and discuss it with them. And if you have a thought, you can post it in chat. You can send it to me privately. But I would like to know, what do you think? Given that Alexis knows that most people who sincerely promise to quit smoking cigarettes don't actually succeed on their first attempt. So, do you think Alexis should believe that she will be the exception? Does she believe that she is somehow different than other people who smoke cigarettes and wish to quit? And if not, is she really justified in making this promise? So I'll just give you a moment to think about this. And if you'd like, you can send me a message or just post it right in chat for everyone to see. Okay. I'm seeing a few messages, a few people saying she is justified. I'm just going to read some of the messages that I'm receiving. Okay, an excellent point. So I received a message, and I'm gonna put the spotlight on someone there. You don't have to put your camera on or say anything, but I'm just gonna say, so someone made an excellent comment, which was that they thought Alexis could promise to try her best instead of promising to actually do it. There is, of course, the possibility that she could be an exception. Okay, getting a lot of messages now, so now it's a little bit hard to read. So there's a possibility she could be the exception. She obviously shouldn't necessarily promise that she'll succeed, but she can promise to try her best. And that actually is one of the views that those in philosophy who have given serious thought to this issue have defended. It's exactly the suggestion that was made. So actually, let's take a little note here. So I'm just going to put the first letter of the person who gave the suggestion. Okay. So another person has an alternative view. So the first person said maybe she's not justified in promising to succeed, but she'd be justified in promising to try her best. But other people have said that she is justified. Basically, someone else said that she is justified because probability cannot be generalized to an individual case. So some different views here. So some people say that really she shouldn't make the promise that she'll succeed, she should promise to try. Other people saying that actually she is justified in making this promise and the probability doesn't really apply to her individual case. So excellent. And okay, I'm still getting more messages here, which is great. Okay, clear. Let's move on. So here are basically two reactions, which are actually the reactions that many of you had. So one reaction that philosophers have explored is to say that there's no promising against the odds. Alexis is not justified. You shouldn't make a promise when your best guess is that you will not follow through. And that is the situation Alexis is in. Instead of promising to quit smoking, Alexis should promise to try her best. And that's exactly what R suggested. On the other hand, others have suggested that sincerely promising against the odds is okay, and Alexis is justified in promising to quit smoking cigarettes. And the thought here is that even if Alexis's best guess is that she will fail, she still can be justified as long as she sincerely intends never to smoke again. Of course, if she fails to keep her promise, then she might be to blame for failing, but the promise itself is justified so long as it is sincere. And I think that's related to the suggestion that T offered, which was echoed by others. So, and then I wanted to ask, do either of these views seem compelling to you? Why or why not? And you can turn and discuss this with the people around you. If you're watching with others, you can send me a message, but I'm going to continue on. So I think some of, when you're thinking about which of these views you like best, or if maybe there's a different view that you like, it's helpful to think about some other examples where this kind of phenomenon can arise. So I'm going to read. This is an example involving badminton. So Jasmine plays badminton. Tomorrow, she will play an important match against a rival. The last time Jasmine competed with this opponent, Jasmine lost narrowly. Before the match, Jasmine is meeting with some of her fans. She is feeling very confident and sincerely promises that she will win her match. Is she justified? Let's take a little vote with the buttons. So how many people think, yes, she's justified in promising that she'll win this badminton match? And how many think, no, she's not justified in promising that she will win this badminton match? About split 50-50. Interesting. Okay, let's look at another case. Okay. This one's called Feeling Lucky. Zach's friend Luann will soon arrive in Singapore. Before she arrives, Zach promises to pick her up from Changi Airport in a BMW, which Luann is excited about. The only problem is Zach does not have a BMW. What he has is a lottery ticket. And his sincere hope is that he will win the lottery tomorrow, which will enable him to purchase the BMW, which he can use to pick up his friend. Is Zach's promise justified? How many people think, yes, Zach is justified in promising to pick up Luann in a BMW? And how many people think, no, Zach is not justified? Okay, now people are having a very strong reaction. 34, 33, 32, a lot of people saying no. Why is it so clear in this case that Zach is not justified in promising to pick up Luann in a BMW? And you can just say it in chat, you can say it to me privately. Jay says it's more of a misplaced faith that Zach has. Another person whose name starts with J says the odds of winning the lottery are far lower than in the other cases. And K says the same thing, very low possibility, almost zero. D says because the chances of Jasmine winning is a lot higher than the chances of Zach winning, which is definitely true. Jasmine, what do you think the chances are that Jasmine will win her badminton match? Maybe around 50-50? Kay says for the first scenario, Jasmine is in control of the outcome, but for the second scenario, it's about luck. So a lot of great suggestions, and we could get into some of these issues. If I were to try to push back on some of the views that people have been defending, in the case of Zach, suppose that can I offer a variation on the feeling lucky case? Suppose that Zach has just had a relative, a wealthy relative, pass away, and Zach thinks there's a good chance that the relative will leave their inheritance to him, but there's also a good chance that the inheritance will be left to Zach's sister instead. In that case, do you think it would be okay for Zach to promise to pick up someone in a BMW, saying, well, there's a 50% chance that I'm going to be receiving the inheritance, and if I receive the inheritance, then I can buy the BMW? It seems like, how many people think, yes, it would be justified to promise to pick up Luann in a BMW in that case? And how many people think, no, it would not be justified to promise based on the possible receiving of an inheritance? Again, a lot of no's. So even if the chances are higher, many people still feel like promising would be inappropriate in that case. And this gets into issues of control and all sorts of questions. Does Jasmine really control whether she wins the badminton match? And these are the sorts of questions that I would, if we were all having a seminar discussion, we would get to discuss together. Okay, I have one more example for you. So one thing that I think many people think when they hear these cases is they really gravitate toward the view that R defended earlier, which says that you shouldn't promise against the odds, and you shouldn't make a promise when your best guess is that you won't follow through. But and importantly, that you should promise to try your best rather than promise to succeed. How many people like the view that says you should promise to try your best? You shouldn't necessarily promise to succeed. Okay, a number of people, 10, 9, 10, maybe 11, 12, 13, good. Okay, a lot of people liking the view that says you should promise to try your best. However, there is a problem with that view as well. And this is a case that maybe some of you will be able to find relatable. And this is an example of long distance. So Jessica and Gerald are in a committed relationship with each other. Due to unfortunate circumstances, they learn that they will have to spend more than 2 years apart without seeing each other at all, in separate countries, maybe all the way across the world. Maybe one person is in Brazil and the other person's in Singapore. Though they know it will be difficult, they promise to be faithful to each other while they are separated. Now, in this case, you might say, well, look, it's a very difficult question whether you'll be able to remain faithful and stay committed during that long of a time separated from each other. And so really, you shouldn't promise to be faithful. You should promise to try your hardest, because that's what you control. But how many people think that in the case of Jessica and Gerald, that that they shouldn't promise to be faithful? They should promise to try their hardest. How many people think, yes, they should promise to try, but they shouldn't promise to succeed? Not so many yeses anymore. Now there's only 7 yeses and 18 nos. Why did you change your opinion in this case? Kay says to say that to try to be faithful, if you're only promising to try to be faithful, that leaves open the possibility that you may not. And that means if I promise to my partner, or if my partner promises to me, I promise to be faithful, I promise to try my best, then they might say, oh, I didn't succeed, but I still kept my promise because I tried. So people are making a lot of good suggestions, and because there are so many of you here, it's not possible for me to read them all right now. And I want to give you a chance to ask further questions you might have. Well, maybe it's worth taking note of a few of the suggestions that some of you have offered here. Okay. In the case of the two partners, so A makes a nice point, which is by giving themselves the possibility of being unfaithful, you might think that it makes it more likely that they will be unfaithful, because they can say, well, I still kept my promise because I tried. But if they promise to be faithful, then maybe that makes it more likely that they will succeed. Okay, so S suggests that it depends on the level of probability that each individual is willing to accept before putting their promise on a definitive outcome. So like, where's the threshold for when a promise is justified? You know, if I'm playing against someone in badminton who's much better than me, can I promise that I'll win? If I'm playing someone who's equal to me in skill, can I promise that I'll win? If I'm playing someone who's never played before, can I promise that I'll win then? And this gets into interesting issues about control and how much control do I have over these different outcomes. In the case of being faithful, how much control do I have? In the case of something that maybe many of you can relate to, how many of you procrastinate? Yes or no? Do you think that, so a lot of people saying yes. Do you think that you have control over whether you procrastinate? Do you think you try your hardest not to procrastinate? It's kind of a tricky issue, right? If I procrastinate, is it because I didn't try hard enough? It's not an easy question. So I want to just offer one last case to think about, which you can consider. It's involving procrastination. So Eugene often procrastinates. He puts off his work until the last minute. Yesterday, he had a particularly stressful night, staying up until 3 in the morning to finish his history essay, which he only started writing the day before it was due. How many of you can relate to this? Probably a lot of you. Luckily, his best friend Peishan stayed up alongside him to provide moral support. Both friends were quite exhausted the next day. After the anxiety-inducing ordeal, Eugene sincerely promises to Peishan and to himself that he will not let this happen again. Apologies. Unfortunately, however, this isn't the first time that Eugene has made such a promise. On several recent occasions, he has promised that he wouldn't procrastinate, but he has not succeeded in keeping these promises. He just finds it really difficult to motivate himself until the deadlines approach. And this is just another example that raises some of the same issues that we've been thinking about. And so you can ask, should Eugene make this promise given his track record? Should Peishan believe Eugene given Eugene's track record? Should Eugene believe Eugene? Should Eugene believe that he will succeed? And this gets into the same issues of how much control Eugene has over whether he succeeds or not. So the thought that self-control is key here, I think, is a good thought. One interesting factor, though, is, do I control myself in the future? Kind of a point that Rosie is making. Do I control how, do I now control how I'll behave in the future? You might think, look, suppose that tomorrow I'm going to be put in a very stressful situation. I don't necessarily know how I'm going to behave when I get into that stressful situation. And I can't necessarily now control how I'm going to behave then. And so I have to make my guesses now based on my best guess of how I'm going to behave in the future. And so the issue of control, I think, is very important here, but it's tricky because I'm promising now, and the control that matters is going to happen later. So it's not so obvious that I have control over whether I succeed. And I actually didn't mean to stop sharing. Almost done. So as we said, Eugene's case gives rise to some interesting questions. And these are questions that I just posed, but one is, given Eugene's track record, do you think Peishan should believe that Eugene will keep his promise this time? How many people say yes? And how many people say no? Some skeptics here in the class. People think Peishan should not believe Eugene based on the information provided in the story. All right, what about the second question? Given Eugene's track record, should Eugene himself believe that he will keep his promise this time? Still a lot of no's, but maybe a few more yeses this time. And then what about the third question? Is Eugene justified in making the promise? How many people say yes and how many people say no? About 8 yeses and 12 no's. So it's people who are pretty split. So I think we're wrapping up here. I'll happily take any questions you may have. I think that we wanted to make sure you had a chance to ask questions. But really, I just wanted to say, we aren't going to settle this issue in half an hour. If you take an ethics seminar at NUS, this is the sort of topic that you might choose to write about for a final essay, and you might defend a certain point of view, thinking about how that point of view relates to the different cases we talked about. And I just wanted to echo Prof. Johnson and say that if you have further thoughts on this topic, I'd be very happy to hear them, and you can certainly email me.
Thank you so much, Prof. Barnett. It's very nice to see all the engagement from students. I hope all of you enjoyed the session. We do have another masterclass that we will start off in a second. Just wanted to quickly remind everybody that we do have the 2 to 4 p.m. sessions where you can engage with our faculty as well as staff. And it is by major or by department, so you can go in there and have very specific questions. Now, I would like to warmly welcome Dr. Peace Wong, who is going to introduce us to making sense of self-awareness and what that may mean. So, Dr. Wong, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. It's nice to be able to see many of you and to also see that you are so responsive to all the different questions. Okay, I imagine that by now you will know that coming to study in CHS or FASS will give you a lot of opportunities to learn very interesting topics, ranging from promises, and also about magic. Okay, so I'm from the Department of Social Work, a little bit down to earth. So when I talk about the topic of making sense of self-awareness and what that may mean, this is basically from my interaction with my social work students, as well as the young people that I have been working with. And they often find self-awareness as an interesting topic for them, in part because they may be growing up and hence, wanting to know more about themselves. So this topic, I hope that I can do justice to it by sharing with you about some things in about 25 minutes or less. Okay, let's begin. Okay, I'm just going to talk about two aspects. One, which is what constitutes self, and so what does it mean? However, I must qualify to say that the concept of self is not so easy because, there are many different aspects to understanding self. You can talk about it from the human development perspective, which will suggest that there are different dimensions to a person's human development, ranging from psychosocial to cognitive to even moral development. And there are also many questions that people may be asking about self, which is, does true self really exist? And if it does exist, does it mean that there are different aspects of ourselves of which, the true self is yet to be discovered? Yeah. So because of that, join us, in social work, you will be able to discover a lot more things about the self and also self-awareness. But for today, I guess what we're going to do is to try to understand a little bit about what self may mean. So I'm just going to ask you this question, okay, which is, tell me more about yourself. Yeah, I'm not sure what you might say, but feel free to just type it in the chat box. Yeah. Okay. So I imagine that some of you may be saying that, something related to your interests, hobbies, or even something about yourself, like, where you study and your age and all that, which is about some factual questions about yourself. So if I were to ask you, the same question in the context of your own peers, I wonder whether your responses might be different. Of course, I imagine that with your own peers, your responses will be quite different because you may be more willing to share something more personal about yourself and even secrets about yourself. So how come we are able to share something which is so personal about ourselves, with our own peers, but not in the presence of a large lecture group? How come? Okay, so let's look at this Johari window to begin to understand ourselves a little bit better. Okay, so in Johari window, basically there are two dimensions, one which is related to self and others, and the other one which is related to known or unknown. So put together, they're altogether 4 quadrants. In the open self, it is information about you that both you and others know. So for example, I told you that, I'm Peace, I work from the Department of Social Work. So that become an open self. Of course, there is the hidden self, which I have not told you. But if I were to tell you that, I love cheese and I love to eat chocolate, the hidden self of myself is now more known. The blind self is information about you that you do not know, but others do know. So for example, sometimes I may be asking you questions like, am I too fast? Should I slow down? So when I ask all these questions, basically I'm asking for feedback. And such feedback will allow my blind self to be more known to myself so that I can make conscious decisions to decide on what I want to do about the speed or the pace of my sharing. Okay, of course, unknown self is information that you might not know and others will not know about you. Okay, so let's try out a little exercise so that we can get to know our unknown self a little bit better. Okay. Okay, imagine, okay, this little guy, okay, lizard, I don't know whether you could see that, okay, drops from the ceiling and fall on your lap. What will you do? Okay, I'm just giving you a bit of time to just like type your responses, okay? And then I'll take a look at your chat. Okay. What might you do? Jump up. Yeah. Wow. What else? Ooh, scream. Flink it away. Yeah. Okay, so this could be possible responses. Grab and fling it away. Wow, grab. Not scared of it. Okay, just let me show you one possible response from a student. Okay. Okay, just let me stop share first and then I will share it shortly.
Drops from the ceiling and falls on my lap. I think I'll scream and run away.
Right. I hope you're able to hear that.
If a lizard drops from the ceiling and falls on my lap, I think I'll scream and run away. My beliefs and thoughts about lizards. I'm actually quite scared of lizards. I think that they're very scary because of like the way they move, and I have had like bad experiences with them, or like insects in general. I think just the idea of it is quite scary.
Okay. So this person has shared that, yeah, it's only audio. Okay, so this person has shared that lizards are really scary, right? Because of some bad experiences. So let's go back to the notes. Okay. So some people say that they will run away, scream, take a closer look at the lizard, fling it away. The question is, how come there are so different responses, right? So let's take a look at our own belief about lizards. So for example, if we think that lizards are scary, we might want to run away or even scream, yay, right? But however, if lizards are cute, we may have a different response altogether. Perhaps we may even take a closer look at the lizard. So ABC model of self-awareness will allow us to better understand ourselves. So there is an activating event, any situation that you encounter, there's a belief and consequences in terms of our feelings and behaviors. ABC model of self-awareness is developed from cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT in short. This CBT will allow us to understand, how our cognition is also linked very much to our behavior. So in the previous example, there was activating event, a lizard falls on your lap. Okay, the next thing that we see is that we panic and scream and run away. However, if we were to unpack a little bit, we will realize that our belief is that lizards are scary, right? And hence we will run away. As compared to others who say that, well, lizards are so cute, right? I may not want to run away, but I may want to take a closer look at it. Second example, Mary sees a snake on the path. This is something that happened. The next thing is that you see her running because she's frightened. If we unpack it a little bit, we may begin to find out that snakes are dangerous in her belief system, and hence she may react in this manner. However, if let's say upon closer examination, she sees that, hey, actually that's not a snake, it's actually a stake. I imagine her consequences would be slightly different. She may not run away, but she may walk calmly, right? And she will not even feel any think about snakes being scary because that is just a stick. Okay, so in these two examples, it shows us that, you know, something happened and immediately we do something, but there is always a belief in there that shapes how we act. Okay, since we don't get to encounter snakes or lizards on a daily basis, perhaps let's take a look at this scenario. Okay, and then as you look at the scenario, help me to think about possible ABC responses. Okay, you just quarrel with your best friend A, and when you try your best friend B, she says that she's busy and has no time to talk to you. You message friend C and he just blue tick without responding. Okay, so activating event is the same. What might be your consequences and how might your belief shape that consequence? Okay, so one possible response would be that, you know, due to the activating event, actually you feel really, really disappointed and you want to just be left alone. Because in your belief system, perhaps you will say, no one cares, you know? Or maybe you may be thinking, you know, I've done something wrong to upset my friends. And hence, nah, I'm just feeling so rejected. So that could be a possible response. However, there could be possible response too, which is the same event happened, but because you think that you can care for yourself and not just only rely on friends to comfort you, the consequence would be that you will take your time out and listen to music and or exercise. So what does it mean? What is the value of knowing myself and what does it mean for social work practice or even social work students? I think the value of it is that we see that we can actually intervene using ABC model through first, you know, looking at the activating event. So for example, you know, if you know that some activating events, you know, will lead you to some negative consequences, you may want to avoid circumstances, you know, you will lead you to further trouble. So for example, if you know that, you know, meeting some peers will increase the likelihood of you engaging in perhaps smoking or drinking, therefore, you may want to say no to such invitation. Okay, so avoiding circumstances. Or B, you know, in terms of your belief system, you may want to identify and challenge your negative thoughts. Example, asking yourself, what are the evidences for this belief? So for example, if you have the belief that my friends don't care about me, okay, so is it really true that your friends don't care about you? Or must caring necessarily be by spending time with you? So basically you have to examine your own negative thoughts and challenging it. And perhaps you may want to find time to reflect on your own beliefs, especially the must and should in your life, and ask yourself, how does this belief impact the way I view this situation? So for example, if you think that friends should be there for me, okay, ask yourself, you know, how does this belief of yours impact the way you view relationship with this friend? If suppose this friend were not to respond in a manner that is deemed fit by you, how would you feel and what would you think? And in response, how does it affect your relationship with this person? So that will be about belief. The next thing that we can use ABC to help us is to look at consequences. Knowing that, you know, belief somehow impacts your behaviors and feelings, we may want to learn to manage our own emotion. So depending on what kind of emotion that you want to manage, if it is anger, you may want to, like, you know, have deep breathing, exercises, relaxation technique and all that. But if it is really about sadness, you know, perhaps you can do something alongside journaling, you know, just allowing yourself to ventilate or talk to someone. Okay, what is the value of knowing myself? I guess the value of knowing myself suggests that, you know, from the ABC model, we have choices. So even though there are interconnectedness between our feeling, behavior, and even belief, at any one point, we can choose to intervene at any level, as suggested earlier. Okay, so we do have a choice. But at this juncture, I'm not too sure whether some of you may be thinking, what if I change my belief and consequential feelings or behaviors and others or environments around me do not change? Yeah, like, you know, the earlier example, we don't have control over many things. And of course, you're so right in saying that, because in social work practice, we believe in not just working with individuals, but also alongside with that, we work with the environment to effect change. So if suppose we were to work with the individuals, I think what we want to do is to provide a certain type of relationship so that the other person can begin to discover himself or herself, the capacity to use that relationship for growth and change. So as social workers, I think we work a lot with the individuals so that eventually they can find that self which one truly is. So at the end of the day, I think what matters is really the congruence between what the person wants to do and what he or she is doing right now. So through the relationship of, being genuine, providing that warmth, that space for them to hold them, a lot of times we see that a lot of people will be able to respond in a manner that allows them to find a deeper sense about their own meaning and purpose in life. And when they're able to find a sense of meaning and purpose in life, they will be a lot more driven towards some positive things and ideas. So as I mentioned earlier, social workers take on a person in environment perspective. So that means that we do not just work with the individuals, but we also work with the environment to effect change. So for example, sometimes we may want to work with the school system, the family system, or even policies, so that we can begin to look at how best to support a person in need. So just to give you an example, so if someone were to come to me, as a social worker for financial assistance, I may not just give the person financial assistance alone, which is what the person may want immediately. But at the same time, I think what we want to do is to begin to help the person to discover aspects of himself or herself that can be changed, so that he or she can support himself and herself more meaningfully. So for example, sometimes we even want to work with the family and also help the person to seek employment and to better upskill himself so that the person can be able to find greater meaning in what he or she is doing. And at the same time, I think social workers also work with the policies and do research so that we begin to see whether there are any communities or groups of people that might be disadvantaged or marginalized as a result of social policy. Okay, so the questions for reflection is, back to the question, which is like, how can we get our unknown self to be known to ourselves at least? Perhaps 2 questions for your reflection, which is, how does learning ABC model of self-awareness help me gain more understanding about myself? And of course, the next one is, in what manner can I know myself deeper so that I can be that self which one truly is? Fairly deep question, right? Yep. Okay, so in summary, I think we have talked about 2 aspects, one which is what constitutes self, and so what does it mean? We have talked about ABC model, Johari window, and to allow you to know that you do have a choice in all this. So in the earlier lecture or sharing, sometimes we talk about, we have got no control. Yes, despite the fact that we have got no control, we do have choices. We can make meaningful choices so that we work towards our ideal situation. And lastly, just to let you know that social workers work with both individuals and the environment to effect change. Okay, just a last quotation for you, which is, the self is not something that one finds, it is something that one creates. So back to the same thing, which is, you do have a choice. I do hope that in the course of, looking for courses that you want to study, you begin to find the self that best fit with who you want to be in terms of your aspiration and also your strengths, and to know that you have a choice to be able to create a future that is deemed desirable for yourself. With that, I thank you. And I will also invite any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wong. That was very enlightening. To our students here, thank you so much for joining us. We would like to now open the floor to any questions you might have for Prof. Johnson, Prof. Barnett, Dr. Wong, and we really hope you enjoyed the earlier sessions. In the meanwhile, is it possible for us to post up the open house screen? We have one question. Is night class very common? One of our professors, would you would you like to share with us? Or perhaps across your departments, we could hear from you. Do your departments offer night classes, night courses?
Okay, maybe I can share first. For
you.
social work, usually for the undergrads, most of our classes, or in fact, all the classes are held during the daytime. Yeah, so we do not have night classes except for the master students because most of them are working and hence they can only come for night classes. That's for social work.
Excellent, thank you. We do have Prof. Johnson, Prof. Barnett. Anything you'd like to add? Do your courses do your departments run night classes?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Southeast Asian Studies, we don't have night classes. We used to have it for our master's program only,
Okay.
but no additional classes like that.
Nice. So yes, in Junye, thanks for being so engaged. You have been very engaged through our session. Yeah, so essentially most of the classes are during the day, barring the essentially the graduate courses. Profs, we have another question here. What are the kinds of assignments and work that will be given for each of the modules? I presume the three that we ran today.
Maybe I go first since
Sure.
Assignments, really, I cannot give you a ballpark idea of what the assignments are. We change assignments every year based on the student feedback. So usually for Southeast Asian Studies, so I'm kind of speaking broadly, for Southeast Asian Studies, it's we have no exams for the most part. Most classes have no exams. So usually about 2 assignments. It could be a group essay, it could be a project, something like that. We also encourage students to do a lot of hands-on kind of experiential learning assignments where you have to go out and interview people, talk to people, travel here, do that kind of stuff. So that's what we do.
Very good, thank you. There's another question here. Do we have reading materials, example textbooks?
Perhaps I will respond to the assignment question and also about the reading because it is somewhat related.
Of course.
So generally, for social work course, we do have like a lot of projects for students to be engaged in because as you would now know, social work is a very much applied kind of like social sciences, so that, you know, students will begin to like work in the communities to look for issues, to help clients and also to resolve social issues. So as a result of that, some of the project work that students are engaged in will require them to be going out to the communities to talk to social workers and people around them. Other aspects could also involve them doing reflection paper. That means upon, you know, completing the project, they have to reflect about themselves, what they think about life and issues, and what do they think they may want to do as a social worker in response. So there's a lot of reflection paper. And of course, there are some papers that are related to some theoretical understanding about subject matters, because social workers do not just try to be good and nice, but we operate using a theoretical frame. So that is where they also need to begin to appreciate a lot more theoretical thinking and ideas. So seeing that light, therefore, I think generally we do have a lot of textbooks for them to, you know, begin to understand different subject matters, ranging from research to policies to, you know, even social issues. But at the same time, I think, you know, helping them to appreciate what is happening in real life by reading newspaper articles and reading journal articles is quite a commonplace as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hope that responds to the 2 questions.
Thank you so much. Prof. Barnett, we had a question about the textbooks, you know, and reading materials in your courses.
Yep, thanks. So in a typical philosophy class, the kinds of assignments are often writing papers, writing essays. And often there will be a kind of some readings that we'll do. So we'll read some articles, we'll read from a textbook. We'll discuss some philosophical puzzles and problems and questions. And then later on in the course, students will have the chance to write an essay about one of those questions, and the prof will read the essay, give some comments. Maybe the students will revise the paper and submit it as a revised version. And students are sort of assessed based on the essays that they write. Sometimes there's final exams with kind of short answer questions. But typically in my philosophy classes, there's a lot of essays and participation-based assessment.
Okay, thank you. So while waiting for more questions to come up, just a quick few housekeeping matters. Please take note that we are organizing a CHS open house in case you have any additional questions and want to engage with us. 11 to 15 May is the date. The phone number, email address, our Facebook and Instagram is there. For those of you who joined us through the morning, if you have specific questions for our departments, do log into the URL we shared in the chat box. Sign up for our Q&A sessions that are by major so that you can engage directly with your major of interest. We also have a poll running. So your support to respond to it would be very much appreciated. We do plan to organize this as an ongoing opportunity, and what you share with us will inform us for our May event. So please, I would appreciate if you could respond. 70 of you have completed it so far. I think there's about 10, 15 people left. We want to also thank Dr. Wong, Prof. Johnson, Prof. Barnett for sparing their time from the busy schedule to run these very engaging sessions. So now back to Q&As. Are there any other questions that we can help you with? You have been, in fact, I would say a model class in terms of the questions you have been asking and responding to. You see the nods from our professors. So thank you for being such an engaging group of students. We are really delighted with your level of engagement. We are coming close to 12:30. I don't see any questions in the chat box. Anybody want to raise your hand, ask a question? We welcome you. Junior, anything else from you? You have been our most, you have been the model student. Lots of questions this morning. Okay, if not, we are 1 minute away from 12:30. Thank you very much, students, for signing in. We see your thank yous in the Q&A. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. Professors, thank you for sharing your knowledge with us and developing such interesting and engaging bite-sized classes from your regular sessions. We really appreciate it. Again, a final housekeeping note. There is one question. For sociology, it's going fast. For sociology, is it mostly writing essays as assignments? I guess we don't have anybody from sociology in this professorial group.
Maybe
Johnson?
I can just add, because mine is probably closest to sociology.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I cannot speak for the sociology department, but primarily within the social sciences, right, like anthropology, sociology, area studies, a lot of it is based on either essay writing or field work kind of exercises. So it really depends on the module that you take.
Okay.
And just to add about textbooks, for the Department of South Asian Studies, we have no textbooks. We don't believe in textbooks, but we'll give you journal articles to read, all sorts of stuff to read, but we don't have one textbook as it is.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, then thank you so much. We are signing off for the day. Do remember, if you're interested to connect with our majors, just log into our website and sign up and sign in to the different Zoom links. So we'll sign off for today. Have a good lunch, and we hope to see most of you at 2 p.m. If not, during our May open house. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, professors. See you. Take care. Bye-bye.